following program is intended to educate and inform. We discuss cannabis being used as medicine, the culture, science, and controversy of cannabis and cannabis laws. We do not advocate any illegal activity. Moth Networks and their associates do not claim to be lawyers or doctors, nor do they represent themselves as such. All their comments and views are of their own personal opinion and personal experiences. Opinions and claims made by the guests and advertisers on Moth Networks are their own, and all parties agree to the Moth Network use and policy agreement. Moth Network and Moth Network associates cannot be held legally responsible for the statements of the host or of their guests. We encourage all listeners to learn their constitution, to assert their rights, acknowledge their duties, and know their individual state laws.
Welcome. You're listening to Moth 22.9, Denver, Colorado. I'm your host, Rick Wainwright, and I'm out on a remote location today with a very special interview with a lady I call one of the queen of marijuana here in Colorado. I love this lady, Michelle LaMay. Welcome, Miss LaMay, and I want to thank you for inviting me in and allowing this to happen. So,
well, welcome to the Baker neighborhood in downtown Denver and the throbbing heartbeat of Cannabis University.
Right on, yes.
And I like to think of myself as the Dean of Green.
The Dean of Green, that's a good one.
I ain't no queen, I'm the Dean.
Well, you know what, look, I there's some ladies here in the marijuana and movement where, I consider the queens of marijuana, and you just happen to be in that list for me, and
thank you very much.
I'm
honored.
Always
take a nice compliment.
Yes, Miss LaMay here is author of I3 that is coming up in the legislative branch, if I'm not mistaken, this year. No,
it's a ballot initiative.
Ballot initiative. Okay, so, and exactly what is I3?
Initiative 3 is a ballot initiative that if I get enough signatures, it will go on the ballot in November of 2014 for the voters' approval. Initiative 3 prohibits penalties for the possession of cannabis. It orders all the courts in Colorado, the judicial branches, to stop fines and sentences for the possession of cannabis. It's very unique. There's no clause, anything like it, in our Constitution. By my design, the legislature will have nothing to do with this law if the voters vote on it. And I believe if I can get on the ballot, which requires at least 100,000 Colorado ballot voters' signatures, that in the privacy of the voting booth, there are very few Coloradans who wouldn't vote yes. Because my argument is possession of cannabis has cost more than anything cannabis has ever damaged, physically to the taxpayers and socially to families.
I agree.
It's time to put the nail in the coffin for all Coloradoans. And in the respect of my design, as far as an order to the judicial branch, it is because of that I couldn't change any other laws, and this initiative doesn't cost a dime.
Wow. See, and that's huge, because a lot of these bills that come out, you're talking, they'll talk.
Enforcement is the cost.
$23 billion to enforce this and to get it started, and so for you to say that this costs nothing to the taxpayers, that's wonderful news right there. Because personally, I was raided. I went through the court system, The state of Colorado back at that time had told me if I was doing everything under state law and I could prove that, I was doing it legally, that they wouldn't prosecute me. I showed everything was legal, and yet I still went through a 2-year court battle. And I know caregivers and patients right now going through the court systems, looking at massive amounts of time right now and major amounts of dollars in fines. And it's, to me, it's disheartening to hear people say that prohibition is over here in Colorado, especially when there's still brothers and sisters in prison. So
exactly. The punishment, this is out of B, the punishment for possession of cannabis exceeds the physical and social cost, like you've endured, that possessing cannabis imposes on anybody in Colorado.
Right. And the thing is, I didn't have anybody turn me in, so nobody was mad at me or anything like that. The state took the position that they were the victim, that I'm the one that harmed them, and I went against the dignity of the good people of Colorado. That's how he had put it, and that
because
was
every
offensive.
law that the legislature drafts has to have a reason behind it, and at the bottom of every page of every damn law, you'll see the reason is for the good of the people.
Right.
It's not, there's no other reason. So to fall back on that legally, it is so basic. And that's what cannabis users, possessors of cannabis, have to fear.
They do have, and it is a legitimate fear. Because, honestly, I could tell you, all those cops that were around my house, okay, yeah, they were, because they were big, okay, bigger than me, and I'm not that big of a guy. So, I was kind of nervous around these people, but there was this one lady there, small little lady from social services. I was more afraid of that woman than I was of those cops and going to jail, because she was about ready to ruin my life, take my kids away from me, ruin my family. That was the most scariest thing in my life.
Well, here it is in C. The possession of cannabis, because the people find the punishment is inconsistent with the damage possessing cannabis imposes on the people.
Yes, and that's the thing.
It's inconsistent.
It really is, and they have you between a rock and a hard spot. For one, they wrote Amendment 20. Okay, so if you follow Amendment 20, they say, oh, well, you're breaking the rules of 1284. Okay, well, in my book, 1284 cannot over-trump Amendment 20. And that's just my opinion, but I have taken it to court. So,
And the result was?
Well, the lawyers were able to do, the state's lawyers were able to do some hocus-pocus trickery with their legal words, and was able to stop my motions and my judicial reviews, and went around them and circumvented them, and basically got my motions dropped. So it was quite aggravating, actually.
And you weren't able to appeal it?
Well, I was.
Did you lose?
Did I lose? Well, you know what?
You lost your time and money.
Right, that's about it, And
but that is valuable to Colorado. That has value. You've paid income taxes all these years. You obviously paid less. And you pumped your money rather than into commercial enterprises, restaurants, and stores. You pumped it into the legal system.
Yes.
No, there was a loss to all of us.
I'm sorry, I did not see it that way. But I do now. I understand how you're saying it, and that does make sense.
We all lose when people have to go through a legal system for a possession of cannabis that is, in my own opinion, not worth the enforcement that it's imposed on people over 40 or 50 years.
Yes.
People that didn't go to college. people that have put themselves outside of society, said they'll never vote. I met these people all my life. Why? Because they were stigmatized by the punishment they endured for possession. Whether it was one joint in high school or an ounce in college or pounds and pounds. The stigma's there. It's the Victorian and elitist idea that you can punish somebody for using a stimulant of any kind is beyond the 20th century. This is the 21st century. Right. And we have to get beyond the Victorian notion of punishment for personal choice.
Right, because right now in the United States, when I think the website that I'm going to quote here is sentencingproject.org. They stated that there's 2.2 million people in prison right now in the United States, and 1.3 million of those people are for marijuana and drug possession, and minor. So at 1.3 million, that's over half of the people in prison for marijuana or drug possession laws, and most of them are
non-violent crime.
And that, to me, is sad. That is, to me, until those last ones of those brothers and sisters walk out of there, prohibition won't be over for me.
It exposes the fact that the enforcement of drug policies was only to support the industrial prison complex.
Oh, yes.
And it supports a whole industry. And where would they be without that 500,000 people in those beds? They would not have any jobs. They would not have any industry for their drug testing apparel, for their uniforms, for everything that it takes to run the modern prison industry. And if it wasn't so damn profitable, the private sector wouldn't have gotten into it.
Right. And I'm working on a letter to the governor right now because of Jerry Brown out in California doing those 127 pardons for those nonviolent marijuana prisoners that they let out. I am going to be asking Governor Hickenlooper to do the same thing, and then I am going to be stating once he does that, he will no longer have to have the private prison systems, and he can put it back into the state hands, which will save hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, because he won't have to have all the staff needed because the prisons are going to be empty now. So they won't need the private prisons anymore. So that's what I am working on right now.
Make sure you send that letter to Senator Pat Stedman, because last year he made a big dent in felonies for possession. By first offense is no prison time. But on the other hand, I don't believe in sentencing people to some kind of rehabilitation program that supports another psychiatric industry that's sprung up called rehabilitation for what?
Exactly.
Every law that's created is created by some people who want to make hay on some social situation.
I believe.
Take your pick. Take your pick. Carnations, peaches in Colorado, cows, cannabis.
Excuse me, sorry.
And I'm not against making money. I'm a capitalist. And I wish success for everyone involved in this business.
Right, because I've always said that this is such a young, budding industry that no matter what you want to do, there is room for you. I don't care if there's already 5 of it already started up. There's room for you. Don't hold yourself back and say, oh, they've already got some of those in the business. No, you bring your stuff out, man. We need you. Everybody makes a difference.
Well, I learned as an educator that it would be best to examine your own towns and achieve there. Find out, what do you do best? Some people have already found that. If you're an accountant and you come to my class, I say, you know what? There's a lot of room for accountants here in Colorado in this industry.
Yes,
there's a niche for every skill and every interest.
Right.
Americans are such great entrepreneurs. Look at all of a sudden what happened to hemp.
Right.
In just 2 or 3 months. It's just wonderful.
And that is for me, such an exciting story.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I don't like the words legalization and decriminalization, okay? Because they suggest that cannabis was supposed to have been illegal in the first place. Or bad, right?
It's a stigmatism. It's still a stigma.
Right.
Yes.
And we used to be on the hemp standard.
Yes.
So, and actually it was required from the farmers to grow, to at least have 10 acres per plot of their land to dedicate to hemp growing. So, you had to grow it to be patriotic here. Even before World War II, they were like, grow hemp, support the war, be patriotic.
As an aside, I have to tell you that I attended an event with Jared Polis in Fort Collins about 3 weeks ago, and he had the new Department of Agriculture. I'm sorry to say I don't know their names, but the heads of the hemp division that it produced the applications, and they were, I'm happy to report, testing using the international hemp standard rather than farming out or contracting out the testing of the hemp. The state is actually taking up the testing. Now the growers will have to pay, but to align yourself with the international hemp standards says that Colorado's right on track.
Oh, most definitely, man. That put a smile on my face instantly because
they made that choice. I think,
and that is, I'm telling you, thinking ahead. And I'm telling you, I don't mean to bash anybody, but when it comes to anybody up in Congress or legislature, for them to think ahead and think logically, wow, I'm thrilled that happened.
They're the turtles in the world.
Man.
By the time a law is made, society's changed 25 years ago.
Wow.
I'd like to suggest that there's been 4 million, there's been 1 million. Colorado has 4 million people. 30, 40 years ago it only had 2 million. And I'd like to suggest that there's 1 million cannabis users in Colorado right now.
Yes. Now, okay, just exactly what you were saying there. When medical marijuana was approved back in 2000, we had 5.5 million people in Colorado at that time, and 2.6 million people voted for medical marijuana. Now, the problem is at the peak on the medical marijuana registry, we've only had maybe 127,000 people tops. I know it's not that right now, because they kicked off something like 40,000 people, and then it had to come back up, but with that being said, that told me right there that there was still 2.6 million people that still thought that the system was broken.
Oh, you're so right. What we were talking about before we started recording was the take I can bring to the world that is non-medical. And for people to think that just because you have a red card, you have access in Colorado is crazy.
Right.
And most of the people I ever met in this state, and I've lived all over Colorado since 1974, wouldn't even consider admitting that they had a disability to get the red card.
Wow. See, now that's fear.
And their ego. No.
Oh, ego.
First, their ego. Second, fear. No.
I can understand the ego
and
part.
And thirdly, access. So available. 1 ounce since 1976 has been a misdemeanor in this state, and that's why all us hippies moved here. Law enforcement wouldn't tell you that.
No,
And I met people. The reason we have lawyers is because the law is complex. Citizens hardly have to remember to stop at a red light and know what the consequences of not stopping at a red light is, much less marijuana laws. But
Right.
it's obvious that less than an ounce is a misdemeanor in this state, subject to a $100 fine. Now, this is what happens in Mesa County when I collected signatures in 1992. People would say, wow, I was stopped. I can't sign that petition to legalize hemp because then they'll fine me. Because I was stopped and they took my bag, and these people were still waiting years later for law enforcement to pound on their door. So the power law enforcement really has is fear.
Oh, yes.
When Coloradoans have less fear of cannabis, much less enforcement of more than an ounce, that's why we voted for all the legislation that we did in a majority, because that's the way the majority of Coloradoans live and feel. Because since 1976, nobody's seen their parents or their children die or become anything more than victims of law enforcement.
Oh, yes.
Which is my point.
And
If you weren't a victim of law enforcement, you might have gone to college. You may be an attorney. You may be a physician.
Right.
You may be a person with a master's in education like myself.
Right. And we got to go to a commercial break, but we'll be right back. And when we come back, I want to finish. I want to start where we finished off right here, because I want to tell a story about my daughter and that very situation. So we'll be right back.
Monkey see, monkey do. I don't know why. I'd rather be dead than being cool.
were talking about, I was going to tell a story about my daughter and her going to, and about the police, actually. She was going to become a cop. And she really had her heart set on it. And I was proud of her because, you know, none of my kids figured it out that early, how, you know, what they wanted to be. So I thought that was pretty cool, man. And, well, I ended up getting raided. And she saw how the police acted, like, during the raid, when they would come over afterwards to ask questions and stuff like that. And they would, and then she saw through the court systems how they were, you know, lying. I mean, because they were just straight up getting on the stand and lying. And she saw that, you know, and she even went through the Thornton Police Department, it's called the Thornton Police Department Junior Cadet Program. And she even did so good that, you know, she got offered to go get her college paid for to be able to become a law enforcement officer. And one other thing, I can't really remember what it was, but it was an honor for her to get that, you know, and I was proud of her. And, you know, she, you know, because of how they acted in court during the raid and everything, you know, she was like, you know, I can't be a liar like that, and I can't, you know, I can't be that way to people, you know. And I was like, you know, I couldn't say nothing, you know.
Well, Rick, Colorado, my point exactly, has lost the services of a wonderful person who could have been a wonderful law enforcement officer, peace officer.
Yes.
Peace officer. We have too many laws to enforce all the time. It's only fear that keeps people in line most of the time, or under the radar, or supports various and sundry other crimes of thievery. You know, it's what a loss, that I say, for Colorado. And that includes the loss we have of all the children over the generations. For 40 years I've lived in Colorado, who have been the victims of law enforcement for possession of cannabis over 1 ounce and ruin their lives, or ruin their self-esteem to the point that they have alienated themselves from our society and won't participate.
Right.
Withhold their participation because they have been set aside and stigmatized by felony possessions for cannabis. It's terrible, and people are still imprisoned, paying fines, in rehabilitation, pumping money into a system of law enforcement rehabilitation programs, imprisonment programs, instead of the economy.
Right. Well,
instead of tuition.
Sentencingproject.org states that there's 2.2 million people in prison right now in the United States, and 1.3 million of those people are in there for drug or marijuana nonviolent crimes. So well over half of the people in prison right now are for drug-related crimes, marijuana nonviolent crimes. Now, that's a lot of money. When we're talking, you know, I've heard estimates of, you know, each prisoner costing anywhere between $42,000 to $75,000 per prisoner. You know, you're talking trillions of dollars that the United States is making.
In my opinion, if they didn't need those half of those prisoners in there to make a profit, there's your markup for the industry. 50% of those nonviolent people are supporting the law enforcement industrial complex.
Right.
In all their ways, in all their machines, in all their gates, all their new technology. You know, everybody likes their little perks in their little own cubbies. They like their tools. In that industries, they're thriving. And who's paying? Those half of the most imprisoned people in the world those 2.5 million are the most populous in the world, which is a shame, much less on the backs of half the population in there for non-violent crimes.
Right, and
It was systemic, and it was a plan
sure. Oh yes. Make no
by the
make no
lobbying,
mistake about that.
by the
Yes, it
lobbyists
was.
in the law enforcement industrial complex.
And hopefully with my, that's what I'm trying to accomplish with that letter that I'm going to send to the governor.
Oh, that's such an excellent idea, and thank you for that. And I'd like to sign it. You should get the signatures on it.
Really, I didn't think about that. I didn't think about that, but yeah, that's a good idea. I should. But anyways, because you were talking about, I think it's
Describe your letter again.
It's going to be Jim Brown out of California did a pardon of 127 prisoners, and so I want Governor Hickenlooper to basically do the same thing, but I want to do it done on a much massive, more scale than that. I believe
an executive reprieve would be so wonderful like that, and I believe he'd be very, very up for it, especially since he has been on the progressive side of the penal industry, working to recognize that many people are incarcerated that have mental problems.
right, and like
That's another issue. That's an entirely other issue.
And another
But
show.
I think Governor Hickenlooper would respect Jerry Brown like I do and consider that. And wouldn't that be wonderful? That, along with Initiative 3, passed in 10 months, would put the nail in the coffin.
Yes, it would.
It would finish it for cannabis for everyone in Colorado, for all Coloradoans of all ages, of all creeds.
Right, because that would lessen the prison system so much that they wouldn't have to use these private prison systems that went to dang near every state in the and their legislature in each state and said, "We promise you, we're going to keep our prisons 90% full." Well, wait a minute. How can you make a promise like that? There's only one way you can make a promise like that. And that means you've got some people paid off, and it's a plan that you are going to be systematically targeting.
Yes. See, in Initiative 3C, I wrote that people find that the punishment is inconsistent with the damage possessing cannabis
Exactly.
imposes on the people of Colorado, on us. The damage is on us.
Right.
The loss is on us as a community, as Coloradoans. We've lost generations of brilliant people who might have gone to the university,
Oh, yeah.
might have cured cancer. No, they were busted with a joint in high school, stigmatized, set apart, and said, forget school. I ran into these people. They're resulting, and why did Colorado have a third of their high school attendance drop out? A third
Wow. That's
A
a large
third
number, actually.
of Colorado high school students drop out.
Wow. I didn't
So
realize that
a lot of that is stigmatisms for many things, and as soon as you're stigmatized, I believe you just go the other road. You just take the other road.
Right.
The other road is easy. The easiest road is to stop participating by non-aggressive behavior.
Right.
Just dropping out, looking like a stoner, playing like a stoner. Because who cares?
Right. I was there. Before I got
cares?
raided. I was almost to that point.
They have humiliated you, stigmatized you, and criminally, possibly, put a felony conviction on your record that keeps you from any financial aid, keeps you from any federal jobs, keeps your daughter possibly,
Right.
in a small town like Thornton, much less a very small town like Silverton, Colorado, you're judged by your parents, and there's no doubt about it.
Right.
It's not legal, but who you might make a story out of some hippie's daughter becoming the local cop, but it may not happen because she's already stigmatized or she's taking that on. It's just sick. People should be able to live whatever lifestyle they want
Right.
in a freedom. Like Pope Francis says, who am I to judge? Who am I to judge what particular nerve cells stimulate me compared to you?
That's true.
For example, opiates always made me sick. I'm not an opiate. I could drink like a fish. I never became an alcoholic. But I always loved cannabis. To each their own.
That's right.
And that's why when it comes to medical cannabis, of course I'm all for it. I'm a disabled person myself. But cannabis seeks you. You have no control.
Right. And
The access is not a problem in the United States.
that's true.
Since I smoked my first joint in 1967 in St. Louis, Missouri, access is not a problem. Everybody wants to ignore the big elephant in the room.
Yeah.
But anyone who wanted to use cannabis could. And if 15% of the population finds it very nice for many ways, I just read a tremendous Dr. Green today that said the fourth most wonderful thing about cannabis, medical, etc., was the wonderful Dr. Greenspoon from Harvard University wrote a story today that said one of the benefits of cannabis was enhancement.
Yeah.
And it was so wonderful to hear that because I so firmly believe in cannabis doing that for me more than it does for my chronic pain.
Right.
The enhancement that I have continually, consistently achieved for life itself. And waking up and seeing the sunshine for 40 years is worth, it's unspeakable.
See, because
I can't describe it because that is exactly the word I've been looking for finally to say, I'm not medical. I'm not, how can you describe what cannabis does better than enhance your life?
That's true. That's true because, without it, I'd probably still be on the prescription pills and I'd still, my wife said I was a complete asshole while I was on those prescription pills. And she would much rather me be on the cannabis any day of the week than me ever go back on the prescription pills, She goes, I finally can smile now, I can laugh, I can joke, when I was on the prescription pills. Well, I was on them for 10 years, but I was never out of pain. So, I was always fighting the pain. I was, I couldn't focus on anything else, and then I would get asked something, and now you're wanting me to take my focus off of my pain to deal with what you're wanting to ask me. It can, it wears on a person very quickly.
But don't you like that big umbrella enhancement and then medical and then, I remember, and who couldn't, smoking joints and watching the Grateful Dead.
Right.
The enhancement of rock and roll music. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's true.
That was the 60s, the 70s. That is rock and roll, enhancement.
I like that word.
And not just the audience either. The musicians and artists. It's just been wonderful for our culture and denied by most of our culture for the last 50 years.
Now, what I love about, what your story is that you do have a medical marijuana story to tell, but you're not necessarily on the medical marijuana registry, are you? You don't have a red card because of the fact, it's okay. For those that don't know, in Colorado, we have Amendment 20, and we have the medical marijuana program. And it is run by the Medical Marijuana Registry, which is run by Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment. Now, that is a voluntary program. I'm going to let that out. It is not a mandatory program. So just because somebody does not have their red card does not mean that they cannot be a medical marijuana patient.
Or in possession of 1 ounce. If
Exactly.
you have one of the conditions listed in the Constitution, Article 18, even without the red card, should be you be written a ticket for possession.
Which would be not
you
even...
would go to court and you
Right.
would say you would have the affirmative defense.
Right, but they're here in Colorado. They try to take that out, that affirmative defense.
I don't care. That's what you
Right.
have.
No, I do
That's
agree
why
with
people
you.
need $10,000 to set aside for possession.
What people don't understand, though, is, okay, yes, we have these rights here in Colorado, but if you do not stand up and assert your rights are not going to just be
That's right.
given to you.
Or if you only have a public defender, or if you're black, or if you're brown.
Right. So
You are still at war. You
Oh,
are
yes.
still in the drug war deep.
most
In
definitely.
the wrong neighborhood, at the wrong time of the day, the wrong time of the night.
Right.
That's why I wrote Initiative 3.
And that's
For
what I love.
all Coloradoans. Because I sat, the story of I3 is this. In 2011, I was able to read A64 as they finished collecting signatures. So why did they do that so early? So are they statutes in my home? Searching for why did they use that strategy when most signatures are easily gathered closer to the election. So in the process, I found that I could go around or discovered that what was the real problem here? The real problem is felony possession. That's what A64 did nothing for. Nobody.
That's true.
Possession of 1 ounce for everybody over 21
Right.
was no gift.
No, it was not, and it was a step backwards because it had risen up to 2 ounces.
In Mason DeWert signed my petition, and I signed his. But people have to realize, and many people do, that A64 was about an industry legalizing possession for a very large industry, for the employees in the industry and the owners to have legal possession
Right.
in Colorado. No possession, no crime. So every badge gives you, I have the vendor badge, Cannabis University has the vendor badge,
Right.
and my employees, without any tax requirements, can be trimming with the large quantities. That's an employee badge. You got to have something if the feds come in and says, I'm okay to be here.
Right.
That's what it's all about, possession. So they give me possession of 1 ounce when since 1976 I can drive around Colorado as a white woman and never friggin' worry about getting busted. And when I run out of my 1 ounce, 2 weeks later, I get my Connect down the road to front me another ounce to payday. And that's the way it is in Colorado.
Right.
Because we have access. The elephant in the room. good access in Colorado. In fact, in most of the United States, for anyone who wants it, 15% of the people whose dendrites are tremendously attracted to it can get it and smoke it all day long. Do whatever they want with their lives.
Right. Well, they've tried to eradicate the plant. They just and they'll say that
Cannabis
we cannot
will
do
not
it.
allow it.
We cannot do it. They cannot do it.
Cannabis. Do you know the Biology of Desire by Michael Phelan? He uses cannabis to exemplify the fact that nature uses human beings to reproduce itself and keep itself alive. He uses the apple, the tulip, and he uses cannabis. 4,000 years has been meeting the psychoactive needs of human beings.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Human beings, from the time they're born, seek psychoactive experiences. Little kids spin around, hold their breath.
Oh, yeah. Very good. Oh.
There are many, many ways to achieve a psychoactive experience, or to ignore it, or to control it. Whatever. Like Pope Francis says. Who am I to judge? Cannabis is in control. And cannabis is making great strides in Colorado.
It is exciting times here in Colorado. I tell you, I'm historic. History book. Books are being written right now. Over this moment, and I'm telling you, people have waited a long, long time. 70 years right now that we've been fighting this war. It's not over yet. I'm not declaring victory but we did win a battle. And it was a significant battle.
I think we win an immediate battle because the media is so responsive. Let's say I have no respect, very little respect.
Thank you
for the media, but they are responsive as fast.
Yeah,
in the 21st century, the media changes lives. Yes. Overnight. Ask anyone. So the response is change Cannabis University. I hope and I think that it'll change the initiative next week when I go to the title board.
And you had just received some paperwork saying that it was...
Well, I filed the paperwork with the Secretary of State to have the title drafted. I'm not in control of the question that you see on the ballot, but they pretty much use the purpose of this section. They change it into a question. And the purpose of the title board in Colorado, since we have the initiative process, where the people can make a law. Now, the South and the East do not have this. That's why it's so oppressive. Very, very hard for the people to come up and change laws themselves outside of the legislature. Right. So 13 states have the initiative process. You get enough signatures, you get on the ballot, enough people vote, a majority. This is a democracy.
That's right.
We elect majorities. 51% vote on a law. It goes into our Constitution. It is not for the Secretary of State to judge what that law is. People put up over 110 crazy, brainy ideas, try to get them on our ballot here in Colorado, because we have a big state with a small population. And it only takes, not only, I can't say only because it's not easy, but 100,000 signatures is not different than California, which has the initiative process, where it takes 450,000.
Wow.
And they do it fast because they have the energy and the tighter political alliances, I would say. So When I went to the Secretary of State last week, in my picture, I delivered the initiative, 481 words, as approved by Legislative Services. Now in Colorado, we've got this little entity that every piece of law that's written by the legislative or the people has to be legal. It has to slide into the law, because every person that signs my petition is actually signing the real law. And I mean commas, numbers, absolutely everything. Because when I turn in those petitions, they are, the petitions are numbered numerically, and it says, these people want this law on the ballot.
Right.
And then when that is approved by the people, the governor must sign it.
So, have you, are you able to keep track on how many signatures you guys get? Or has that process started yet?
No, I will, Monday, I met the man who approves the petitions. And since I collected almost 20,000 signatures 2 years ago, I've been fortunate enough in this little uptick with Cannabis University to be able to just go in, having already designed the petition with 100 signature boxes, and send it over there to the Secretary of State, with the exception of the question, which is what I go to the title board for. Now, 2 years ago, when I went to the title board, I was there 7 minutes. And I don't expect anything else this Wednesday, January 15th, except that I believe Kirsten from the AP, she's going to be there. And there's going to be a little more interest in the lobby when I walk out. And I'd appreciate the cannabis community in Colorado and here on the Front Range especially, joining and standing behind me when I announce that signatures are being collected that day, that hour. Because from that day you walk out of the title board, you have 6 months.
6 months, okay.
To collect signatures. And so
and we need
it turns out January 15th to July 15th, we need 100,000 because it's typical that people sign who really aren't valid voters the day they sign the petition.
Understood. Okay.
See, if you register to vote the next day,
it'd be an
the
invalid.
computer knows, the database knows, every day the Secretary of State publishes a database free and open to the public. No, I'm sorry, not free, $500 of registered voters in the state of Colorado. The entire database is $500, but you can get a school district of registered voters if you want to from the Secretary of State. So 2 years ago, I'd like to say that because of this current Secretary of State letting our Colorado county clerks purge their voters in such a way that if you didn't vote in 2010, they could purge you. People did not know they were not registered to vote. 40% of the people that signed Initiative 40 2 years ago were not registered to vote. So I withdrew it August 1st of 2012.
Very interesting.
But I was anxious to ride the shirt tails in that year with A64, and people approved of it because they go hand in hand.
Right.
They go hand in hand with regulate like alcohol. Hey, it's legal, people think right now.
Yeah.
People all over the country, when you say it's legal, the genie's out of the bottom. And how are DAs gonna, people that think it's legal now in Colorado.
Right.
And are they going to be prosecuted? Oh, God, I hope not.
Well, look,
But,
the way
I
they've
mean-
written it, it's going to be a cash cow for them.
It could be either way. Oh, no.
That's why I think
Criminally
that this.
and
I
commercially.
believe, that's
You're
why I
absolutely
believe that
right.
this bill is very important, and like Michelle says, we call on the cannabis community and the people of Colorado, even if you're not, we've got so many people that don't smoke cannabis that are still on our side, and that's a very, we need those people. We need you to get behind this bill because, look, nobody should have their life turned over, ripped apart. The cost
That's right.
that is put on that,
That's right.
you can't even put a cost on that because you're talking, oh my goodness, I do a whole show on just that subject alone. So, we need you to get behind this and,
Yes.
donate.
Well, I don't think there's a family in Colorado who has not been affected by the enforcement of cannabis.
Yes.
And this stops the courts from fines and sentences. There'll be no legislature sticking their nose in creating any regulations.
Right.
It doesn't cost the taxpayers a dime, and it's a big umbrella. I couldn't take up the fight for reciprocity for people already convicted of this crime. I hate to say it.
Right.
It makes me sick to say it because I couldn't go down that road, and my design of Initiative 3 is the back door. It goes around the cowardly legislatures, you see, because I don't think they'll ever legalize cannabis.
Really.
No.
Very interesting. Very interesting. 'Cause,
They never would. And if you listen to last year, their reaction is to the conservative voter. They're reacting, whether they in their heart or not. They think they're not going to vote and put it out there that they support cannabis unless they're confident that a majority of their constituents agree with them. So you
Right.
got Pat Stedman in District 1. The man is a wonderful gay man on Capitol Hill. What is the usage of cannabis in downtown Denver? Oh my God, you can only go by how many dispensaries there already are. Of course he comes out and supports Diane DeJet. When your representatives feel like it is politically correct to support hemp, to support cannabis, they'll jump on the bandwagon.
Yeah, and you've
Or
seen
this year, they'll be voted out because the people in these counties, in these towns, seeing the money go down the road.
Right, and I'm telling you, the people have shown that they don't have a problem with a recall.
This is Colorado, and anybody who underestimates the independence of the Colorado voter, much less the intelligence of the Colorado voter. Don't forget, we're the only state in the union that ever passed a taxpayer's Bill of Rights.
That's true.
Above and beyond whatever the Rocky Mountain News, the Denver Post, or their legislators told them. Eventually it got passed. Never underestimate the Colorado voter. And if I can get these 100,000 signatures with your financial support, I am sure, and I'm absolutely positive, in the privacy of the voting booth, people will say yes. Let's
believe so.
stop fines and sentences for the possession of cannabis. Period.
Well, I for one thank you for this work. I truly do. It's the good of everybody. And that's what I love about it. It's not just for a certain group of people. It's for everybody.
I was cannabis inspired.
Well, look, my client that I just got done with the court case with, he had a weapons. It was a weapons / medical marijuana trial, and he got found not guilty on the weapons, but guilty on the medical marijuana. And they had thrown 2 pounds worth of shake stems and stocks and made 2 pounds worth and made it look like a whole bunch, and he got convicted on it. And because they were allowed 24 plants, and he only had 22, but he still got convicted. So
never forget the district attorney and the sheriff are elected, and they pander to the same conservative vote.
yeah,
That's the point.
it's ridiculous.
Get rid of the sheriff. I mean, we could hire bailiffs and people processor and to drive around spending $5 a gallon gas around the county and supplement them with Coloradoans without the uniform on, without the gun, without that enforcement cost.
That's true, because you know what police officers have forgotten, and even the sheriffs, some sheriffs have forgotten, is that they are our servants. You know, they asked to take that job. They asked for us, please, let me do this job for you. Okay, they are our servants. They're not our rulers. They are not our masters. They are not the law. You know, they are there to enforce the law, not their law. You know, so, and there's a huge difference. You know, I mean, I'm not saying all of them are that way.
Because Colorado's got so many, 52 counties. And I contacted, 2 years ago, I contacted every sheriff in every county in a letter asking them to support, at the time, Initiative 40. Very same language. And I did get a couple letters back because I wanted to inform them. Jump on our bandwagon. Relieve yourself from the cost of the prisoners you have in that jail when gas costs $5 a gallon. Which would you rather do? Support your fleet or support a bunch of nonviolent people for more than an ounce of pot?
Right.
And you know, some sheriffs contacted me back. But it's not politically correct. They believe they won't get elected. So it's up to the electorate, to the voters, to show them that they do indeed, at times have changed. And really, change, I believe, like language that I learned with the masters, comes from the bottom up. That's all there is to it.
Right, and it does.
Like the cannabis plant wielding control over human beings. We live in nature that we find hard to respond to in our industrial society. It's just, we're not close to nature. Some people find it hard to respond to things that have been litigated out of our control. You know, by industry. You know, everybody knows cannabis was made illegal by the nylon, and hemp was, you know, denigurated because there were better products.
Right.
That's all there is to it.
Right.
So, money, 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 money. I learned in journalism too. Follow the money.
Right. Oh, it tells the story right
Follow
there.
the money.
Yeah. No, because.
And I think it's plain in Initiative 3 that, as the author of Initiative 3, no one that would read it would find any agenda in it.
Well,
And
a good
I am
book.
proud of my design. That's all I can say. It's a legal design that's never been done because there's nothing that orders the judiciary something to do. There's nothing like it. But we Coloradoans can make any damn law we want to make.
Right. Now, I wish I had
It's
the
great.
Colorado State Constitution pulled up because. Oh, hey. There. Oh, my goodness. Wow. Yes. But, okay. We are the only state in the union, as a matter of fact, that we are where we can self-govern ourselves as well. And it says it in the... I wish I can I can't remember it word for word, and so I don't want to.
Does that have to do with home rule?
Yeah.
Home rule. Yeah.
So
Yeah, all Western thought, all products of the West, as far as taxpayer bill of rights, originally home rule.
it basically says that we can abolish our government when we feel like there's a danger to our life pursuit and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, and when we deem it necessary. There's those words, when we deem necessary, but the thing is
Well, I don't think you can rile people up that are doing cannabis.
no.
That's the thing, is that
because you go and ask anybody, really, do you know your state constitution? And I guarantee you 99.9 of them are going to say no.
well, people are not educated in Colorado, and this is by design also. The design in education in Colorado was the legislature for 10 years not funding public education because the Republicans were in office. That's by design. Keep the people down, keep them stupid.
Right.
People aren't stupid. They're misinformed and uninformed when they trust going in that building 8 hours a day. But if they're not taught law,
Or
civil responsibility,
civil.
possibly even how to write a check,
Yeah, or
how to be an adult, how to think, when there's perfectly capable of doing it, some students lose interest, some students become sheep, and a very small majority of students possibly become our leaders, free thinkers,
right,
and people we can look up to.
Well,
And that includes artists and musicians who influence society. Because it's a small majority when there's no access. There's more access to cannabis than there is education in this state for 40 years.
Right, and then they made that big old deal. Oh, well, legalize cannabis in 40 million. Well, I think it was 60
And they
million.
cry about the children. The children.
Right, yeah, I'll leave that one for another show as well, because
We could talk for months and months. You should have me on every week.
oh, I would love to, because I feel like we've got a good, okay, yeah, I feel like this has just been a wonderful interview. I've really enjoyed this. We've already gone an hour, and it barely feels like we've even hit all
I
what
really
we've talked
appreciate
about.
being able to take this time and talk about Initiative 3. But I know you wanted to ask me about Cannabis
Yes,
University.
I did. Now, okay, because, I'm going to be 100% honest with you, okay? Because I want to back Cannabis University, okay? But tell me, how do you instruct the laws and how to grow in one day?
Well, in 2008, when Obama said he'd call off the dogs, September 2008, my sister sent me an article from the San Francisco Chronicle about Oaksterdam University.
Right, okay.
And I just graduated with my master's degree in education, curriculum and instruction.
Wow.
And my sister knew that this was right up my alley, being an activist for 20 years, using cannabis for 40 years. So I went online and I checked out Oaksterdam University, really quite a big website. And I thought, well, I'll go down to Los Angeles and attend their class. In the meantime, in about 24 hours, I thought of the name Cannabis University.
Very cool.
And I knew that I had it. Because in my mind, where is Oaksterdam? What does that mean?
Right, right.
Cannabis. Now, I paid a price in many ways for that word in my corporate name. But I decided after looking at the website, they posted their curriculum. And here's this all-in-one-day class. And I'm also a member of the Colorado Bar Association. I'm a paralegal business. And I thought I would tweak that all-in-one-day curriculum, and I've always admitted this, for Colorado. Because we're Colorado, we got our own separate little constitutional medical marijuana law that allows possession, including misdemeanor 1976. I always throw that in because nobody really remembers and knows that. And then the 4-hour afternoon class is monitored and is able to proceed the way it does because of experienced teachers.
Okay.
We make it through all the ways to grow cannabis. Outdoor, about 5 minutes because there's only one season in Colorado.
Right.
You know, you have the sun, a lot of advantages. And then we immediately jump to indoor. And I designed the outline. I've gone through and had many, many, many teachers. And some were good and some people, I actually had to give the money back. It's because I am interested in my students learning.
Right. Well, that's
And
the way it
I
should be.
nixed a night school or extended educational experiences because this class has no test, no assessment, information driven, and basically people who want to farm or grow something just put the seed in the ground and get going. And by my design, instead of a master's program or any extended time in the classroom, we provide you lifetime support forevermore for you and your garden. Because the first 2 years, 2008, 2009, I answered phone call after phone call, day in and day out. People said, do you have a master's program? What? Chatting. Find out, oh, they got a big problem in their grow. And everybody's grow is different.
Right.
There's a hump to get over. And I thought, why not offer our services as either consultants, and especially in the digital world, as a marketing tool. And it's been very successful. Students come back to the classroom to talk to our human beings, before the class years later. Send
Very
a
cool.
picture. I don't market to my students. My students can stay completely anonymous. At first, the first 2 years, people were the first dispensary owners. The next 2 years, the demographics changed from Coloradoans to people from all over the country. And in the last 3 months, there's been an uptick in Coloradoans coming to class, in like father and son, mother and daughter, experiencing an intergenerational feeling that we can start a legal business or we can grow for our own family. I never ask students what their intentions are. It's none of my business. I love providing choices for people.
Well,
That's
very
what
cool.
education is. Facilitating. In the morning, we expose people from all over the country on all the legal ways to have possession
So okay.
in Colorado.
That's cool. That's cool. Okay, because I was always wondering
How to be a good neighbor.
Right. Well, that's very important. Very
Yes.
important.
The whole community suffers when somebody torches the garage.
Exactly. Oh, yes.
In many ways, and especially in the media. This is a media battle, people.
Right.
Consider your neighbors, stay a good neighbor, and many, many, many times, and especially in Colorado, in many, many jurisdictions, you might as well just commit to not changing your demographics.
Right.
Staying a little undercover.
You know, like
Period.
my neighborhood. Okay, I know all my neighbors, and do you remember the show Bewitched? Okay, you remember Gladys Kravitz? You know how she was. Okay, well, my neighbor is Gladys Kravitz. Okay,
Neighborhood watch.
Right,
The neighborhood watch person.
Nothing can happen without him knowing what's going on in that neighborhood. I mean, it's not okay, but before I moved in, he was just very anti-cannabis. Well, because his son drank and smoked pot and trashed his house, so you know he didn't like people that smoke cannabis, right? You know, but I come moving in, and here I am. I'm already a medical marijuana patient, you know, and so I'm setting up shop right away to get going, you know, and you know he just loves me and the family, you know, and he goes, especially at my raid when I got raided, he was like, Rick, let me come into court. I'm going to tell him you're not a drug dealer. There's no way you could be a drug dealer, and you know what you're doing ain't illegal. And I'm getting blown away by, you know, am I hearing this right? You know, I mean,
you know, we tell our students from out of state, from the South, you know, if you move to Colorado, that can fan exhaust out the basement window will melt the snow in the winter.
yes.
You know, think about it. Think about putting that big old box of 1,000 white light fixture out to the trash. Think about it. Think
Right.
about it. Nothing's changed in Colorado.
Right, because that's what they
Because you've got neighborhood watchers. You've got people who resent cannabis users.
Yes.
And, boy, that's, I believe, another subject.
Right.
Another subject. These are core people. You'll never change their minds.
Right.
And you don't want to be their neighbors. So
Well,
be a good neighbor.
I had
Be a
this
good
one
neighbor.
old lady that, you know, once she found out that I had smoked cannabis, that, you know, she called me evil. Now, and I mean, she meant it, you know.
There
and
you go.
I tell you what, that almost devastated me.
It is devastating.
I went home, and I mean, I sat in my room
And
for 2
you're
days.
an adult. Think about the children. Think about the children 14, 15, 16 years old.
Right?
That are accused of being evil. If you're smoking a joint, bringing a joint to school.
That's ridiculous.
Why? Because their friends said, I dare you bring a joint to school.
Right?
You know, they're children. They are children, and they're stigmatized from then on.
Oh, yeah.
So I believe that the stigma is so powerful, it drives people to the dark side, to the low road, and straight out of our society
yeah, well, it does.
into non-participation. Maybe even bigger and better drugs. Maybe a life of crime.
Right.
Maybe a life of being a thief. It's terrible.
It is. And in all reality, that is the crime in itself.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
yeah.
Absolutely right.
I'm sorry. We need to take a break here, and we're going to go to commercial, and we'll be right back.
No time for dreaming. Gotta get on up and do my thing. No time for dreaming. Gotta get on up and do my thing. Dream while you're sleeping. Time slowly creeping. Open up your eyes before it's too late. Try
welcome back. And I gotta tell you, Michelle, you're one smart lady. Man, I tell you, it's
What can I say? Straight A's. I love to study.
Well, you know what?
I
Knowledge is
lived my
power.
life backwards. You know, I was a young mother. I was able, in the days when, before inflation, to live an inexpensive life and stay home with my sons and read on the couch. And I read and I read and I read. And I realized that when I was 36, I would be a free bird. Both of my kids graduated high school. And I moved over and started Colorado Mountain College, and they didn't have no home to come home to. We were all three in college.
That's very cool.
I married a college man, and yeah, I had a good 2 years of high school education in Catholic schools, and really, my whole career is built on those 2 years. But it was A-track, and
Well,
I had a great education, that's all I can say.
the way I3 is written, you know, when they say knowledge is power, you know, that is proof of it right there, you know. So I mean, you know, really, I'm thankful for that, you know. And I'm throwing, you know, my support behind it. I've been throwing my support behind it since I've learned about it. You know, medicine of the herb is wanting. Go ahead.
You know, I have to mention Paul Danish. I don't know if you attended this debate that Laura Cryho had at Castleman's, the great marijuana debate. Okay, Reverend Baker herself, Mason DeVerd, and she invited Paul Danish, who I personally know from the 90s in the original initiatives for legalizing hemp, etc. And he was the only person that brought to that seminar some real advice, which I took seriously. He said, make it simple. Make it a big umbrella, simple. And I live my life by that. I'm a simple writer. I believe in transparency, simple language, simple communication to people. And that a initiative that embraced the big umbrella would be much better.
Right.
So I thought of him, and that was a big influence on me, because I thought that's what the voters want. That's, you know, that's how I can, because every initiative has to sell itself.
Oh, sure.
Whether
Well,
it's
definitely.
milk, you know, hydrogen, or UFOs platforms, like in Denver.
Yeah, you know, I do believe what Mason Tybert said about, you know, how he was able to help get it passed was, you know, he didn't have to sell people on legalization of marijuana. It was less harmful to
Safer
Safer.
than alcohol.
Exactly.
Alcohol is the key, because there's, like I say, there's not a family in Colorado not affected by alcohol.
That's very true. Very true.
And that statement, there isn't a family that doesn't say that's the truth. You know, we Coloradoans, for all my premises, 1976, we baby boomers, we know that to be the truth.
Yeah, I'm not a baby boomer. Yeah, I'm Generation X. So
Yes, but you know, my 1984, my sons, they say what? I think 1947, I'm the high-end baby boomer.
Okay.
Big Rolling Stones girl fan and rock and roll fan.
That's cool though. Because you had mentioned that you had smoked your first joint at 67, and I'm like, man, that's when I was born. You know, like, wow, I feel like
I was 21.
very cool.
I had 2 kids in preschool.
Wow.
I had my first son when I was 17. And, my second son when I was 19. And I've never regretted that. It's wonderful.
Oh no, I've got 7 kids myself. You know, so you know, I don't I don't regret it. I wasn't gonna have any kids at all, actually, and I got 7. So my last 2 were twins. So
You can't tell Mother Nature what to do, can you?
I tried. She was like, "Oh yeah, I'll show you."
I bet Mother Nature wanted you to be a good father, and I'm sure you are.
Well,
those children, they need you, and they wouldn't be there.
Right. Well, I got a good relationship with all my kids. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah, I've that I can honestly
parents
say.
Parents sure have a hard line to toe, don't they?
Well, it sure would be easier if they would have made a book, on how to be a parent. Man, that would have been wonderful. But
well, my comment on children in cannabis is that I don't approve of lying to your children.
Right. No, neither do I.
I believe in being transparent at all times on all issues with your children. And this is a funny story because parents and children sometimes don't know what each other are doing, but parents think they're not being observed. And I was a sub in Denver Public Schools, and I would ask these girls, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" And they wanted to be strippers. So you are influencing your children.
Right.
And if you act like a criminal, your children not only may think and buy into that, but actually think that they themselves must have something wrong with them too.
Right. Yeah.
You can't buy into this, that you're a criminal, because honestly, cannabis users are not criminals.
Nope.
We had our choices, whether it was legal or not. We made them, and we have resisted being denied access, usually 100% for 40 years.
Right.
So put that in your bonnet and smoke
I
it.
got 2 points to make about what you said. As far as being labeled a criminal, I always tell people, well, wait a minute. Who labeled you a criminal, the government or the people? Because to me, that's 2 different things. If the government labeled you a criminal, I'm not gonna, I don't buy it. If the people labeled you a criminal now, okay, fine. I'm gonna accept that. Okay, because perfect example, Bonnie and Clyde. The government called them criminals, but the people thought they were heroes, and they helped them, for quite a while until they were killed. Okay, so that's what I mean by who labeled you a criminal, government or the people? Because it's 2
in our
different
day
things.
and age, it's usually the media.
Well, yeah, they.
Yeah. Can you believe the Denver Post sucking up now? After
Channel 9 News.
Creating a big website, I was approached Cannabis University to advertise on what's it called? The Cannabis.
The Cannabis?
The Denver Post, big website.
Yes, I've.
$1,500 a week. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, you bet, sure.
Yeah, I do have my own opinions on that, and
well, I said
I
the Denver
have-
Post is a businesswoman that pays taxes in both Denver and Colorado. Millions of press releases. Not one phone call until January 2nd, when the cooking editor of the Cannabis called me for, actually she only sent me an email, and I would only respond by email just because for, some advice on growing, like what equipment is the basic equipment.
Right.
And I sent her a brief email. And that's all she was going to get out of me. She wasn't going to get to talk to my teachers. I can't believe him.
Right.
Brenda's dead. I'm sorry to say. We learned this in 1992. Oh, monopoly. They'll take advantage of it for a while.
Sure they will. You know, and that was my problem with Channel 9 News with their stance on medical marijuana that they had throughout all the years. And then I seen the dispensaries.
Elitist, arrogant reporters.
And then I go into a dispensary and I see one of their Channel 9 coupon books. And I tell you, I ripped that dispensary a new you-know-what. And I ended up walking out of there. And I didn't buy nothing because of just seeing that Channel 9 News. Like, you hypocritical mother, you know.
Oh, they were always so slanted.
Exactly.
Discriminatory.
You know, and now they've got their
Prejudice.
big old webs. They got
They're
their own
outright
webpage.
prejudice. They expressed all the time in every report they ever did outright prejudice. And I refused interviews down at the Capitol when it looked like I was probably the only person around. I'm in media. I'm not impressed.
Right.
And I said, no.
Well, I feel
I'm not
honored
gonna.
sitting here being able to do this with.
At PBS, I told them the same thing. I know exactly what publicity might get you.
I feel honored. I honestly do after hearing that. I feel honored. I thank you for allowing me to do
And,
this.
you know, then I'm going to get my money, my media dollar, or my media face by being such a good. They're just corporate. They're just business.
Right? It's sickening. I'll tell you that. It is sickening.
Jump on the bandwagon.
Yeah.
Nobody will remember any of this in 2 years. The whole controversy and the excitement, it'll just be.
Oh, yeah. Right. No, I agree.
To be unable to go into a retail store in Mesa County, maybe. Maybe Montrose, who knows? Burlington, maybe.
Because I tell you, people,
everywhere.
now that Colorado did, and Washington, honestly, did what they did, the amount of states that are, I'm hearing now, New York supposed to going to implement medical marijuana through executive
I
order.
have to plug Cannabis Engineers in Cannabis University is extending into Illinois and Michigan.
Oh, very cool.
And October 12th, my associate and franchise holder, Cannabis Engineers, had a cookout in Ann Arbor that was very successful. And recently it's gotten Illinois, January 1st. The governor signed December. But what medical? They have a huge list of symptoms and disabilities. 64 for anyone in Illinois to acquire a red card,
Very
which
cool.
will be almost everybody in Illinois.
Including PTSD?
Then the somebody got to the legislator, because this is by legislation, and this is what happens. Only 12 licenses to grow and sell.
I heard that.
No, you talk about a monopoly. And you can't grow your own. But if you're a nonprofit, like the Veterans Association that we've associated ourselves with to educate veterans so that they can get these jobs with these 12 giant grows. Because even if there's 12 licenses, it's going to be like automobiles. You know, everybody in Illinois has one of 6 major automobiles. In Illinois, they better be growing now, and I think they are.
Yeah.
Think of the population.
Because you got to
Think of the population and the spirit and the progressive nature. And on the other hand, the pure corruption in Illinois, in the legislature, they would only be willing to grant 12 people licenses to create that kind of monopoly.
You know what I picture when you speak of that? Have you ever been to one of the Cabela's, like in Minnesota, where, I mean, you're talking 24 football fields wide by 14 football fields long, just filled with just nothing but cannabis. Boy, that's what I'm picturing, those 12.
I've been in some grows now in Colorado. Some big grows is with the vendor license. And they're so exciting. I had to go at quitting time to give one of my contractual employees, trimmers, to get their 1099 filled out. And I can't tell you what it did to see legal employees walk out of a 7,000 square foot warehouse in the middle of Denver, Colorado. They were legally employed and worked hard all day and added to our economy.
Right.
And this was before January 1st, people.
Right.
This is a wonderful thing.
Oh, a beautiful thing. I mean, yes,
That gave me a better feeling than the big opening January 1st. Because it was a more routine feeling of it occurring all around the state. Every day.
Really?
People working.
Very interesting.
People working and growing.
Well, yeah, I
It's
felt
good for the
kind
planet.
of a sense of
It's
pride
great for
that
cannabis.
day, though. That's for sure. I mean, like
And
I said,
you know what cannabis knows? Up in smoke. And my mentor that's been advising me, my business mentor in the business, for 6 years. Every 6 months I ask him, what's the market like? Still happening? He says, Michelle, you can never grow enough cannabis.
Right.
Is that true? That's the bottom line, people.
It really is.
You cannot grow enough cannabis.
No.
Look at the lines. Look where people came from just to stand in the line, not just to celebrate, but to go smoke it. And maybe go down the street and buy some more to smoke it to enhance their lives.
And did you read about that old grandma that came in? She didn't smoke, but she wanted to, be there. I love that story. I wanted to give her a hug, just to, that's how I.
They found a guy on the news this morning that drove all the way straight from Florida.
Wow.
So I had to be, the media keeps generating. Here we are, January 8th, 2014, and 8 days later, it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right.
This morning, NBC Morning and CBS both had long pieces on cannabis in Colorado with old Charlie, what's his name?
Charlie Brown?
Charlie Brown.
Yes, he's
assuring the public it all went really well.
Yeah, and I've got.
You're missing out. They're laughing on the way to the bank. They're laughing all the way to the bank.
Well, speaking of banks, man, I sure hope they get that situation settled, man. I mean, that is a huge concern right now.
And it's a big liability for people who really are paying their taxes. How are they going to prove they paid them?
Right. Because, I used to be a dispensary myself.
How do you defend your legitimacy?
I was a dispensary myself, and actually, in the state of Colorado, I was one of the first businesses that registered my dispensary as an agricultural business, and I registered because I was going to buy my own land, and when I did that...
In 2008 and 2009, I had 3 students who actually formed a business and told the state, and walked up and put it out there, I'll pay my taxes, okay.
They sent me my money back.
Nobody made any profit?
No, they sent my money back.
Yeah. Because
what the hell?
You have to make a profit to pay tax.
Well, look, the state was going to bring in $124,000 a month just on my stuff alone. And they said,
in 2008, I sued the Department of Health to have more than one caregiver. And I sent them a list of my caregivers. Because even to this day, everybody that's a caregiver, medical marijuana dispensaries, they photocopy your license and they are growing for you.
Yeah,
and that's the way it is. And I thought, well, I'll have 5 caregivers. If they can have 5,
Patient.
I'll have 5
yeah,
caregivers and spread it around.
exactly. Well,
Because they're taking, I already have the right to shop with that red card anywhere I want. So I was, at the time, 2008, when only 7 people were distributing legal cannabis in this state, I was able to extend to them my red card rights.
right.
That was the big deal.
Yes. Yes.
As Cannabis University, I went around and chatted everybody up. Everybody, 5 people, and you know who you are. And, chatted up and checked out the reefer and looked at the crystals. And let me tell you, those were the old days for you new guys. Not the super old days for us old guys when we could brag about all the wonderful reefer, but 2008, 2009, people were proud of their cannabis. They had big spyglass on the counter where you could count the trichomes.
Right.
And, many, many, many people, industrialists, let's say, shake off those trichomes and have extractors that can find a trichome on a concrete floor.
Right. Yeah.
Because the vaporizing and the hash oil is such
big.
really monetized, really created profit.
And I hate how
Really
they.
created profit.
It did, and I hate how they use
I'm not
the
against
word.
profit.
No.
I just am a connoisseur. I'll have access that I enjoy, the access I have.
Right. But that's the thing. I'm a connoisseur. I don't appreciate it being called the crack of marijuana. I hate
I've been putting that
man.
down. I haven't been seeing that very much.
I hate that term, man. The crack of marijuana.
Well, they'll jump on anything.
It's
They'll jump on
ridiculous.
anything.
But anyway,
Extracting companies have the vending license,
that's true.
There's 4 or 5 extractors
You know,
on the
personally,
list.
once I started having my legal problems, I decided to just stick strictly with caregivers. As a caregiver.
Most of my students make the same decision.
Yeah, it was just the smartest thing to
I
do.
believe that cannabis will produce itself for your needs, the needs of your friends, just as well as if you were a businessman and rather than sell liquor, you decide to sell cannabis. Because now in Colorado, you don't have to grow your own cannabis. You can open a small outlet and buy other people's cannabis.
Right.
Wholesale. So it is like liquor. It should be. That's fine. That's fine.
Well,
The access we have is with caregiver products, connoisseurs, extractors, people are proud of their product. It's not going to go away. It's
people just need. Yeah, they
wonderful.
are getting better.
I always say that people call me the American man and women are only 100 years from their ancestor, great American farmer.
Right.
And if you don't kill your philodendron, come to school.
Right. And I'm gonna say, just like the industrial world tells you, get to know your farmer. Get to know your extractor. Get to know your grower if that's the way you have to go. Don't. Yeah, I would definitely not.
And always, even though I don't teach extraction, I've been called. Many people have called me for that specific information, and I've chosen not to go into any industrial hazardous material usage and have any liability whatsoever for me, my students, or my faculty.
Right. Well,
On
it's the
that
safest
account.
way.
But I do have a hash oil making class.
Do you? Right on.
In a book that's done tremendously well, sold over 200,
Wow.
tincture making
Very
by
cool.
Dr. Kim Mateo. My friend the nature path.
I saw that post that you had made about that.
Yeah, it's
it was
$20.
Oh, okay, because I was going to
And
ask you how much it was.
the entire preparation of your cannabis, all the ways that over 4,000 years there are to make cannabis. And at the end, she even includes advice on other herbs to add to your tincture
Very cool.
for your specific needs,
Very cool.
which I think is really nice. Other oils
Uh-huh.
to add. Say I'm no naturopath, but it's been a great success.
So, I got to tell you, like next week I'm going to have an interview coming up. Now, you know that cannabis, we've had 0 deaths from cannabis, right? Well, this interview that I'm coming up with this gentleman, he was almost our first death, and it would have been related to a cannabis oil. He had gotten, there was this caregiver.
Toxic?
It was very toxic. Oh my gosh, they, he got a hold of
isn't
it.
it becoming regulated?
Yes, it is. But I haven't read I know that they put out the final rules and regulations. I have not had the time to go through them yet, so I can't comment on it. But he had gotten, I'd gotten an email from a person and says, Rick, you need to. Can you help? This guy is looking bad. Well, I go down, and I mean, this guy looks horrible. He is on death's doorstep. And I mean, this person gives me the oil that he is taking, right? And I open it up. I open up a capsule, and I mean, I don't even have to put it next to my nose. The smell of the naphtha about knocked me out of my chair. And I asked him, man, how long have you been taking this? And he goes, man, over 30 days. And, he did some major damage to himself.
This reminds me of a program I just saw about prohibition and how in the 20s, when they bottled alcohol ran out, when they ran out of absolutely everything, even wood to make alcohol out of, that's what killed people.
Yeah.
And that's the result of prohibition. Is that kind of, those are the results of people coming in to the market and taking advantage. It's kind of a access problem.
Yeah. Well, so I ended up taking that oil away from him, and I ended up giving him clean oil, and then I gave him, so what happened is, he has a feeding tube, and it ate the feeding tube out of his gut. He has a tumor, so I gave him this anointing oil, and he rubs it on there, and when I met him, the tumor was like a 50-cent piece, and now it's like, a dime. And he can eat solid food now.
I know the patient you're talking about.
Yes, okay. So,
there's no doubt, there's so much just anecdotal live evidence, even in the state. And at least I see that they are going to, Hickenlooper ask for some money to start some research.
Uh-huh.
I think they'll be shocked at I think they're looking for bad, negative results. And I think they'll be shocked at cannabis being in control of our intellects will produce these evidence of these great results of everything cannabis does for the human race.
Right. Well,
it enhances living.
It did for him.
Absolutely. There you go.
So
what are we striving for in life? Enhance life.
Hey, did you see that picture of him standing up there going,
live strong.
Man, that was a wonderful picture.
Stay enhanced.
I'm telling you. So
smoke one, son, like my friends say.
That's it. On One Blunt Radio, Dr. Kush. Yes, sir.
My great friends.
Yes, they are. They're good people over there.
Great friends at Cannabis University.
Yes, and of Moth, Medicine of the Herb as well. I enjoy those guys.
In the community.
So, guys, we're gonna close it up, and Miss LaMay, I thank you so much for allowing us here to do this. And I mean, you're such a smart lady. I would hope after, maybe after I-3 goes through or something that, maybe we can talk again. And because, man, I feel like we can,
Well, that's why next November we ought to talk every month.
That's fine
We'll
with
keep
me. I would
you
love to do
updated
that.
on things, how they're doing.
Thank you very much.
And if you know any rich people, have them call me, because I need to pay people for these signatures. I have volunteers, they do their best,
Right?
but don't get it. You really have to stay on track. 3,000 signatures a week. It's also evidence that nobody gets on the ballot. Out of 110 people that go to the title board, it's not that easy. And there's legal petitioners that have licenses. And in an off-election year, they're charging about $1.25 per signature. And these people have to get paid every week, as you would want to.
Exactly.
If you called them and signed up and got paid by Initiative 3 through these licensed people in Colorado to collect signatures. It's also an opportunity for people to make some money.
Well, they are doing
but I need the money to pay y'all.
Right. Well, they are doing a job by going out and getting those signatures.
Of course
so,
they are.
Everybody needs to be paid,
For their work.
Exactly. We know how that works. Nobody, you can't expect anybody to work for free for very long.
No. And don't make it a moral issue to pay people to stand out there in the cold in front of the post office and ask other people to sign a petition just because they're not volunteering.
Right.
People have an issue with that. But
Well,
all the people who volunteer try their best. But they volunteer because they have full-time other things to do.
right.
They do their best. And I was so happy to say that I got almost 20,000 signatures. And there were people from their family and friends and all around in their big circle. And that means a lot to me. So January 16th, on my birthday, write, call me, email me, and I will send you one of the first 100 petitions with 100 signature boxes in it. You do not have to be a registered voter to carry a petition.
And what's your
But
email
you
address?
do have to ask people if they are registered to vote. They fill in the boxes, and in 6 months, send it back to me. I don't care if you got one signature on that petition or you've wound up gathering 2,000.
Right.
They've sent you packets. Please
Every-
do what you can. Every voter needs to have the opportunity to sign that petition to get it on the ballot, because when it gets on the ballot, I don't intend to spend a dime convincing, advertising, marketing this initiative, because I truly believe in the privacy of the voting booth. Coloradoans will vote to stop fines and sentences for the possession of cannabis. Period. Yes.
Amen. Right on. Yeah, we're gonna close it up from here. Michelle's
Thank you.
Michelle's voice is getting sore there. She's been a busy lady here
I've got a
here
cold.
lately, but she has been gracious enough to allow us and to do this. So we thank you, and we'll talk to you guys next week. We hope you enjoyed. So peace and one love. We're out of here.